if you send them an interview to do, if you send them a technical assessment to do at home, you really have to sell them in doing this assessment. So it will be much harder to convince them to do it, and you'll lose people at this step, and you'll usually lose the best candidates. So hiring tech talent is tough. It's not difficult, but it's tough. It means if you have a proper recipe, if you know how to proceed, if you're rigorous enough, you'll hire people. But it takes time, it takes dedication, and I'm here to tell you more about how to scale your tech team from the first tech talent that you hire to Series A, Series B. Okay, so there will be 3 main stages. The first is why hiring is so tough and why it's so important, why it's so paramount. And then who am I? Why am I here to talk to you about this? And then the hiring process in itself. And I try to have both a very strategic standpoint so that you can have a brief overview and you can properly save all the information I gave you, and then very actionable insights. So the first thing is tech hiring is tough. It is tough. It is tough for everyone. So everyone trying to hire tech talent is struggling. So it means it's way tougher than on other regular job offers, such as like business people, etc. And it's tough, and it's getting tougher. Sorry about that. So that's the difference between the training in software engineers and the needs in software engineers. That's in the US. It's the same in the whole world. So this discrepancy is growing. So you have to get up to speed and then know how to proceed. It's paramount at every stage of the company, so I'll try to see the 4 main stages. I won't talk more about the 4th one. So the first one is pre-seed. So you're the founder, you're hiring the first tech people, and usually it's the founders who do that. Then post-seed, you're hiring 3 to 8 tech people, and then it's the founders and sometimes the operating team that builds and try to improve the sales process and iterate on the process. Then it's post-series A, B. Here you have to onboard 8 to 20, 30, 40 people. Now it's the hiring team that scales the hiring machine. So you have dedicated people that will hire, that will scale that process. And then it's post-series B, so you can say 20 people in the tech team or 30, 40, 50, but that's more or less this stage where you already have a very well-oiled hiring process, and then you have to keep on innovating and keep on being competitive. I will only talk about the 3 main steps, and I think that's why you're all here. So who am I? First, I'm the founder of Hiresweet. We work with a handful of companies, about 700 startups that's in France, in Europe, and in the world. We also work in the US. I know some of our users are here. We helped Conto scale to 100, 200 people and 50 people in the tech team. We worked a lot with Miro, Doctrine, BlaBlaCar. So usually we come in when there are about 10 people in the whole team, and already 0 to 3 people in the tech team, and we help them scale. So probably, if you're yourself working in a tech company, we already work with you. And so we've been doing this for 3 years, and that's a very nice picture of the team. We grew a bit since then. You might not see me, just here. And if you're interested in reaching out to me, you can reach out to me on this email address. So it's robin@hiresweet.com. And then I also get my experience of working with these companies, scaling my own team, and then also the books that I read. I'll give you some book recommendations which I used to build this presentation that I recommend you all order now if you haven't read them so far. So the first one is Smart and Get Things Done by Joel Spolsky, the guy who built Stack Overflow and Trello and Visual Basic, for those who still know that. It's very interesting on the hiring process in itself and the assessment and sourcing phase. So I took some of his insights. The second one is a very well-known book. It has been maybe a bit overused, so everything is not to use per se, but there are very interesting insights, especially on the reference check, a very precise process that we use and that I will show you in the presentation. Then the third one is Work Rules by Laszlo Bog, the former head of hiring and people ops at Google. It's very interesting on the retention, onboarding phases. So here, Jean-Baptiste will give you more insights about the onboarding and retention, but still very interesting book to read. And then the last one is not a tech hiring book, it's a sales and business hiring book, but I strongly recommend you read that book, especially because the guy that wrote it was in charge of building a replicable and predictable sales machine at HubSpot, and part of his mission was hiring a lot and trying to make as few mistakes as possible along the way. And so these are the main books I recommend, and now we'll get to the hiring process. So how do you structure all the information I'll give you? So I like to say the hiring process is separated in 5 very different phases. The first one is the preparation, is where you draft the job offers, when you draft the job cards, when you write your templates, when you prepare the process. The second one is you already prepared the job offer and you're getting people inside your pipeline. So that is the sourcing phase. And here you rely mainly on inbound, outbound, and referral. Then there's the assessment. Once you already have somebody in the process, you have to assess them. So that's what we usually call the interview process per se. Then the conversion is a very important step in itself. And then the retention. And retention starts with onboarding. Again, Jean-Baptiste will tell you more about that. And again, retention is a whole part of the hiring process. You cannot have a very well-oiled hiring process if you don't spend a lot of time on retention and making sure that your team is your first advocates. So let's get to preparation. The first thing that you'll do, so I'll try to give a very strategic overview and then very actionable insights. So the first thing that you'll do is write the job offer and define the exact profile you're looking for. So you have to start with that. There are a lot of sources on how to do that. You can read the book Who. Everybody quotes Who on the scorecards. Nobody does them. So still interesting insight, but not very actionable. Then the right thing to define the person you're looking for is to actually write down what would be his job missions in the first weeks, in the first months. You really have to write that down, and that'll help you get a better overview of the person you're looking for. And you'll try to fit that into a typical schedule. So you'll know if the person can do everything, all the missions that you have prepared for them, and you have to make choices, and then you'll have to adapt depending on that. And then choices, you can have the person at the perfect price and available now. So you have to make choices, and a good way to do this is to find arbitrages. So arbitrages is a financial notion where you try to go in a place where you have no competition. So everybody has arbitrages. It can be because you went to École 42 and you know former students. It can be because you have people in your network. So you'll try to find untapped talent pool, and you'll have to write that down and start with that. One of the main arbitrage is often your own personal network. Then you have to start building the employer brand. So employer brand is usually for people in for companies in the third stage. So that would be, you can reach Series A, B without a strong employer brand. So you don't have to invest too many resources on this at the beginning. But at least build a welcome to the jungle page, because everybody has them, you have pretty pictures, and it's still a good way to get active candidates. And then you have to list your unfair advantages. Unfair advantages are the reason why top tech talent will join your company and not another company. And so you will really have to think about it and try and select 4 to 5 very unfair advantages. I'll give you exact examples down the line. But this is exactly where you will fight. So when you start as a company, don't worry too much about the employer brand. That's not a problem. Everybody at your stage has a weak employer brand anyway. But you have to focus on your unfair advantages. And then you draft the process. So you list the criteria of the position you're looking for. You should have a look at the sales acceleration formula to find the criteria and how you define the different criteria. Prepare the stakeholders, onboard all your team, prepare them on the process, draft whatever you like. If you want to use an applicant tracking tool, Usually it comes later down the line, but if you want, you can. Welcome to the jungle as a pretty good one. And you also can use Google Excel spreadsheets. And then you'll have to set the tempo and define precise timelines on which you want to hire that person or else improve the process. So here, the KPIs that you monitor are the time to hire, the conversion after the first call, or the people that are really interested in what you have to say after the first call. This is a very actionable cheat list I'll give you to make sure that you have a very good job offer once you have written the job offer. So the first thing, and it's the strongest one, is you make sure that no other company could use the posting. So it means you use no generic wording, and you'll try to be as specific as possible. For instance, if you say, we are growing fast and we are a very young company, everybody could say that. If you say we are growing 15% months on months in terms of revenue, and we are a company of 24 years old on average, that's better. So you try to be as specific as possible, and a good way to do this is read your job offer and ask your question, could another company say this? And if the answer is yes, then you have to adapt the wording and be more specific, more precise. So you'll also try to avoid generic wording, especially as far as tech talent is concerned, because that will raise red flags. So you don't want, I'll move to French for this one, you don't want people to be force de proposition, that kind of wording that is very broadly used in the HR space. You'll try to avoid that. Okay? So be specific, go straight to the point, try not to bullshit the candidates. Third advice, that is actually very, very useful, is try and describe the person's actual first months. That's very surprising, or few people do that. I do not ask you to describe the first year or the first few years, but if you're hiring someone, you should know at least what that person will do in the first months. And doing that, even in terms of actual schedule, will give a lot of overview to the candidate, and it will help you know what you're looking for. And so you could, in your job offer, so that's a small tip, you could say, your first months will look like that. And by saying that, you'll give lots of information about your companies. If you say your first months will look like that, the first week will be dedicated to your onboarding, we'll be spending time with that person and that person. And then the second week, you'll be starting working on very critical issue for us, that is X and Y. And on the third and fourth week, you'll be onboarding on your new project that you will spend 6 months on, and that is working on this next feature that is very important for us because this and that. So you get a much better overview of the position if you do that. Try and do that. Very few people do it. Try and write it actually in the job offer and it will work. Make it clear what's in it for them. So do not make that job offer about you. Again, you're selling your company here. Okay? You're trying to address very rare tech talents, people that have a lot of job offers, a lot of opportunities, so you have to make that about them, and you have to make it very clear what's in it for them. And I would even recommend writing in your job offer what's in it for you. So why should you join the company? X and Y and Z. And your unfair advantages, talked about this before, I'll get back to it. And then, very specific for tech talents, you'll describe your stack, but not only list tons of technologies, but say what's fixed, what's moving. Okay, so we currently use Node.js and React, but we are open to changing front-end technologies. Or, so that can be very different from we've been using Node.js and React, and we don't want to change because our CTO is an expert in React, or very different from because our CTO is very stubborn and doesn't want to change. Usually when you list just a list of technologies, it's the last one that will be understood. Okay, so we are using that and that and that and that, and that won't be moving. And the technical challenges, and one of the best way to do it is to actually describe the person's first months. So I've been talking about the unfair advantages. So unfair advantages are areas where you'll be very competitive. So I've listed 10. I think you'll get the actual presentation afterwards, so you can still get back to it. Rule of thumb, an unfair advantage is something that no other company has. For instance, at Hiresweet, we have teammates giving courses 3 times a week at noon. So no other company could have that. And that's a proof of our dedication to learning. Okay, at Hiresweet, you can get any book delivered to you for free. Okay, so probably other companies do it, but at least it's very specific, very differentiating. So you could like look at the team. I don't know if you had a look at Screen's team, but that's the perfect example of that. A team of 8 players that started a company, and in their first messaging that they used with Hiresweet, they made sure to convey that message, and that was highly efficient. So that could be academics, that could be previous successes, that could be connections, that could be personal brand. Then specific tech challenges, and here you want to target top 3%. Okay, if you say your tech challenge will be to build a very nice UI and help companies do X and Y, and that's not very specific, you're not in the top 3%, no interest at all. So top 3% is you'll be managing a huge amount of data. Only 3% of companies in France have this amount of data. Okay, and you'll find your specific thing. Dedication to learning, that's very important. So you can say that the person also at Hiresweet, we have half a day per week dedicated to learning and individual learning. So that's very specific and very differentiating. Then the package, it's of course important to see you as competitive on a salary standpoint. And that can be salary, that can be BSPCs, BSPCE, that can be work-life balance, etc., etc., etc. So I'll send it to you. And then the last one is traction, but not only say we're growing fast, but actually provide figures. Okay, so here you have defined your process, you know what your unfair advantages are, you are all set, you're waiting to start the war, and here you have to actually meet with people. So that's the sourcing phase. At these very early stages, you rely mainly on referral, and usually referral and personal networks are the strongest weapons to onboard your first 3 to 5 people. It's very, very strong. I'll get to that later. Then you have the inbound. So inbound, you have platforms such as talent.io, Hired. There's one called 50 partners, 50, job 50, something with 50 talent, right? You work there? Okay, 50 talent. Okay, cool. Then job boards. So here, job boards, you have Welcome to the Jungle, Angel List, that works very well, especially on tech talents. And then you have agencies, so Urban Linker, Ignition Program, Mobiskill, pretty good. And then you can also rely on freelancers, so that's if you don't want to hire on the long term, if you don't want to CDI. Okay, and then the last one is outbound, where you'll reach out to passive candidates, to people who are actually not currently looking for jobs that you want to get outside of their current company. So if you want to do outbound, you'll start with defining very precisely the position you're looking for, the ideal candidate. Then you'll go on finding actual candidates. So you can use Hiresweet, that's what we do. We automate all the work of finding candidates on LinkedIn, GitHub, etc. But you could do this manual to a certain extent. And then you'll reach out at scale to these people. So you have to automate this. Again, that's what we do. But you could use tools like PersistIQ, Reply, HubSpot to reach out to candidates. So here, if you want to reach out to passive candidates, what's really strong is that it's mathematical. It works. If you reach out to candidates on a certain scale, they will answer and you get an interview. But you have to be methodic and keep on doing it. And again, you have to... One question that often goes back is whether to reach out on LinkedIn or personal email address. So I strongly suggest reaching out on personal email address with a very specific and very personalized messaging. Then the referral, as I said, is very useful on the first people you're on board, and much less so later down the line, because it's a very strong level, it's a very strong sourcing tool, but it only can go so far. So the referral, the best way to do it is to reach out to a person with that exact profile that you could hire. You reach out to them and actually don't try to hire them, but ask them for connection and referrals. And you do this, and every person that you meet, you'll ask them for 3 connections, and then to these 3 connections you do the same, do the same, and do the same. So you'll build your network like that. You have to be very proactive. You have to be to set targets and meet a specific number of people every week. And if you do that, in the end, you'll know who's looking in your network and who could be interested in your company. So here to give you some key figures, if you rely on inbound and marketplaces, you can expect to have 2 phone screens per week. So that's more or less it on a very specific job position. And if you do outbound, so that's the 3rd one, you get 1 phone screen per 20 person that you contact, that you reach out to. So that means that it can be much more than 2 phone screens per week if you're very active, or it can be much less. So it's really depending on, and again, you'll target different candidates. Those that are actively looking are, well, there's often a reason why they are actively looking in a very specific market where everybody finds a job. So it can be that they are moving, it can be that they had problem with their management, or it can be that they just got kind of fired. So you have to make sure of that. And then how do you make sure of that? How do you make sure that the person that you're hiring is actually the person you want to and is actually an A player? So you'll try and do 3 different things. The first thing is the screening call. You start with that. The second is a technical interview, so we get back to it. And the 3rd one is the fit interview. So the screening call will be what you do at the first stage. Here, you don't try and assess, you just try to detect if there's a huge mismatch with the person. So you don't meet a person in live if you don't do this screening call before, and you just look for huge mismatches. Then there's the technical interview. I'll give you more insights about that. And there's very interesting, surprisingly enough, very interesting example of this in the sales acceleration formula about how to build a proper technical interview, and that works especially well with tech people as well. And then there are the fit interviews where you'll try to score and score and score and be as objective as possible and try to build your scorecard before, look for past performance, and give actually practical insights, so you'll be selling here. At every point, you'll also be selling your company. So selling is first not actually pushing your company very hard, but trying to understand what the person is looking for. So at every step, you'll try to understand what the person is looking for, and you'll try to really understand what is motivational leverage are. So the ultimate interview process that we recommend is start with a phone screen, 15 to 30 minutes, then do the on-site technical assessment. So we strongly recommend an on-site technical assessment. So that means no off-site and no sending people doing work at home. It can work, but that's not something we recommend. Then you'll do the culture interview, so that's usually with other founders. Then the team meeting, and then the phone offer. So it takes 4 to 5 hours for one person. And again, the conversion rate are more or less a rule of thumb. So again, the phone screen, you'll mainly try to detect the mismatches. The on-site technical assessment is where you'll be really, really strong and very selective. Again, you have to sell the company on the phone screen and to understand what the person is doing, what he's looking for, so that you will onboard her properly on the on-site technical interview. Then the culture interview, usually at this step, you'll be much less selective because you already detected mismatches and you already also detected culture mismatches in the technical assessment. If somebody doesn't take the feedback properly, then you'll know it. Then the team meeting, and then the job offer, the phone offer. So again, it really depends on the company. I know the average is about a 50% conversion. So that means if you want to do one hire, you have to get 16 phone screens. Okay, that's pretty much it. And you can adjust this and then improve and then measure what you're doing. Don't spend too much time trying to figure out the exact figures, especially when you're young, because you won't be precise enough, you won't be meeting enough people. So just get a rough overview and don't try to optimize too much at this step. And then the assessment, so that's what we do at Hiresweet. At every interview, we send that to the person in the company who met that person, and we ask very specific feedback, and again, we try to score and score and score and score. So this improved over the time, it changed a lot, might change again. There are some things that don't change, especially bienveillance, which is one of our core value, and coachability also. So there are things that will change, and you have to be ready to change it. But then you have very specific feedback, and you can measure what you're actually looking for in a candidate. In the sales acceleration formula, the guy who wrote it recommends then using the actual results of these tests and backtesting it once the person has been 6 months into the job. So you can see which people are actually performing depending on their notes. And he also recommends doing a list of criteria of like 20 criteria. So you'll then rely only on pure metrics and know who performed depending on the actual criteria. I think at your stage and in the first stage, it's not worth it to spend too much time trying to reverse engineer the formula and just try and take a shot in the dark. Then resources, if you really want to do online tests, there's Coding Game, Codility, HackerRank. On the process, on the actual assessment process, there are a lot of literature, so you should read Who, Smart and Get Things Done, and then the Sales Acceleration Formula, one of the 3 books I recommended. And then the inspirations, you could look on GitHub. A lot of companies have their actual interview process and technical assessment online. So there's on the Drivey GitHub a very nice set of interviews. And then there's this guy, Potato, which did a list of all technical interviews in several companies in the world. So that's a huge set of inspirations. Again, you can just scroll LinkedIn and look for job interview questions, and you'll find very interesting material. And then there's the conversion. So here the conversion will focus a bit on the reference check. So that's something that can be very useful at this point. The conversion in itself, so if you really design your hiring process as a sales process, at every step you'll be asking people what that candidate is looking for, and you know exactly how to convert that person. So you really have to design your process from the day one as a selling process, and selling is not just pushing your company, it's getting to understand what the person is looking for. So is she looking for remote work? Is she looking for technical challenges? Is it that he wants a very important salary? So you have to understand what that person is looking for, and in the end is only giving it to them. In the end, you go all in, so that means you can be half-fast. You have to give a proper answer really quickly. So we have a company doing this that has a huge success rate on their job offers. They'll get someone in the final interview, tell them that they get them an answer in the next 7 days, and on the same evening they'll call him and give him the actual job offer. And so that's a huge effect on the candidates. So you have to go all in, and once you make that offer, so that's somebody in your team, so you have to give it everyone. And then you have to follow up. I know everybody doesn't agree on this, but we recommend not doing explosive offers. Explosive offers are offers like you have 24 hours to answer, or 7 days, or whatever. So we recommend not doing this because the candidates, you don't want somebody joining your company because he has no choice. You want him or her to know about the company and be sure about his choice. Be quick and gently to follow up, and then pre-onboard a person before he arrives. So you'll invite her to the Teams drink, you'll send her material, you keep her posted. And the reference check toolkit is something very powerful, so you'll find it in, I think it's Who, the method for hiring. It's very important to take 15 minutes before actually making the offer to ask this question. And what's even stronger is to embed the reference check in your process. So we wrote an article about this. It's asking the person at the phone screen and telling her that you have the reference check in the end of the process. So you'll tell her, at the end of the process, I'll reach out to your last manager and ask this specific list of questions. How do you think he will answer? And people are very transparent about this because they know you asked the question. And so that really works because if the person on the phone screen says my last manager will probably give me a 5 out of 10, so that's a very bad sign. And people actually say it. So it allows you to not go to the end of the process and do the reference check. And then there's the retention, so I won't spend too much time on it, but I can. Retention is key. You really have to onboard and retain your talent because that's the people in your team that will help hire more people. Again, you'll see that your team is onboarding at every stage. They'll do the interview with you. They'll help you if you have to do referrals. So it's very important to work a lot on this. So takeaways, hiring is paramount, is very important. It will be your main job as a founder of or key employee of a early startup. Hiring is selling. You have to design your process from the start as a selling process. And again, selling is not pushing your companies, understanding what the person is really looking for. Unfair advantages matter. So you have to find your specific unfair advantages and you have to be as specific as possible. You have to differentiate yourself from other companies. And then retention is paramount. And there's one last game. I've been talking about 4 books at the beginning, and we'll offer those 4 books to 4 people in this room. And the only thing that you have to do is send me an email to my email address, robin@hiresweet.com, with the actual name of the book you want to get delivered, and we'll get it delivered to the first person for each book. So you can go, and then we'll move to the Q&A. And you have to write the exact actual name of the book.
Okay, guys, who has questions? Okay, so this is a microphone. You can throw it to other people, okay? And you have to speak here. Okay, don't hesitate to throw it. It's soft.
Hi, I'm Mathieu, CTO of Fairmoney. So I have a question. You talked about the team meeting as in the process. So you say you have an 80% success rate. But so, I mean, we do team meetings, but we struggle to find what are the criteria to actually churn people at this step. And what do you ask your team? Because I find the feedback is often too subjective about the candidate.
Right. So at this point, again, the person is so far deep into the interview process that it shouldn't be below 80% conversion. And you have to ask specific questions to the person so that it cannot just dismiss the candidate. It cannot say, okay, it's a green light or it's a red light. And you have to ask for a specific feedback and do not ask for green light or red light. Just ask for ranking on different set of criteria and then say that you will only use the rankings as part of the interview. So. Yeah, right, exactly. It can be cultural, it's also some kind of, there can be skills, so you really have to design those questions for your company, what matters to you. It can be questions like, do you see yourself working with that person? It really depends on the company, but you have to be very specific and ask a very specific set of questions to everyone. Again, they are not here. If each person of the team can give a red light, that's not good because you'll lose a lot of candidates depending on your team. But you have to tell them that you'll use this as a consultative information.
Okay, thank you.
Merci. Thank you for a very insightful presentation. You started with a piece of statistics mentioning the number of trained developers as opposed to hired over the 10 years period 2014-2024. Which geography does it pertain to? Is it France, Europe, world?
It's the US. It's the statistics of the US Bureau of Labor.
Do you have any orientation for France, for Europe?
It's the same, more or less the same.
Okay, thank you. Catch the mic.
It's coming, it's coming.
Mic is coming.
So, hi, I'm Konstantin from Pukaru. My team and I reduce food waste via big data and AI. My specific question is about how do you install that process? So I heard about, from an entrepreneur from the US that you should personally track the time that you spend on those tasks yourself to have like a key figure what you expect from the person actually, because most entrepreneurs are frustrated because people take long times on those tasks because they always think about their own capacities instead of thinking from the perspective of the person who's doing that. Yeah. What do you think about that? Do you have such tools that you use to get those core competencies that you need for that person tracked down in any way, or how do you do that?
That's a very, very good insight, actually, very good advice. We don't do that. I don't see tools other than time tracking tools. So there's one, I don't know, we use time tracking tools, so you can use them. You can measure your overall performance on different set of tasks. For instance, if you're managing customers, as I was in the early days, you'll know how many customers you'll manage and then maybe apply 30, 20% discount to that. But indeed, I think that at least you have to keep in mind that a person will not be as efficient as you, and that's normal because he won't be as involved, he won't know the company as well, he won't know the in and outs of the product. So just keep it in mind and don't see any other way to do it, especially on early stage startups. But it's actually very tough to hire the first person on one job when you've been doing this job before. So no answer more than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, thank you for a very insightful speech. I run a company, we hire engineers remotely for teams in Europe. So I'm wondering if you have any insights on adapting this process to a remote team environment.
I'd say the process is pretty much the same if you want to hire remote people, just except that it won't be on-site interviews. But I think it's always good to spend time doing the technical assessment and just try not to outsource it completely, especially that you could use screen sharing tools. There's a lot of things you can do. So I'd say the process is specifically the same. But then you have one unfair advantage, that is that you're hiring remotely, so you can target different people. So that's one very strong unfair advantage, and you can leverage that. And because you'll leverage that, usually all your stats will be better here. So you can target better people, you have a better conversion rate on the front screen, etc., etc., etc. So all very strong unfair advantages will help you improve all these figures.
Thank you.
Hi. Again, thank you very much for the great presentation. I have a question. Let's imagine you found your startup and you need to hire the first 2 or 3 tech persons. You know more or less the technical skills that you need, but you don't know where to find these people. What would you do?
So you have the technical skills to assess them, but you don't know where to find them.
Yeah,
right? Okay.
exactly.
So I'd go using my own personal network. It's usually what we see from companies getting from 0 to 5 people, and we actually work with less and less companies like that because we are less relevant. So I'd go using my own personal network. I go on LinkedIn and scout all the people that fit the job description and try and have a coffee with them or get them a beer. Just have a very informal conversation and ask them for references and more people to talk to. So I really go into tapping my own personal network. Again, you'll need to get 16 phone screens to make one hire. So it means that if you want to hire a lot of people, you have to make a lot of phone screens. But if you want to just hire one person, it can be even below that if you know the person because he's in your network and he has trust in you because he knows you personally or has been in the same school or worked in the same company. So that can be below that, and everybody can find 10 relevant tech people more or less likely to change jobs in their network.
You don't have to spend time on platforms such as talent.io, stuff like that.
No. I think at this step, and especially at this step, you'll ask your network to help you improve the job offer, improve the perception of the actual job you're looking for. The problem with platforms is that you'll be just you have too much information and don't actually know the exact profile you're looking for. You'll compete with companies that are much bigger than you. They'll pay better salaries. You have absolutely no unfair advantage, so you're below the line, so you won't make the cut. So I wouldn't recommend doing this. And I wouldn't recommend using Hiresweet neither, so I'm not biased.
Thank you for the presentation. To hire an associate, do you think it's the same process or?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say you have to. So you'll probably have to double all the figures here. I mean, divide them by 2. So you have to make a lot of phone screens for partners who will usually be informal discussions, beers, coffees, kind of stuff. Then the on-site technical assessment will probably be moved at the end of the process. Team meeting, I assume there is none, so you can skip that. And the culture interview would probably recommend spending some time working with a person as a freelancer, something like this, and try to have a more thorough culture interview and try and assess the person on the course of several days or several weeks. It can be a pretty good way to get an associate to first start with a freelancer that you'll pay a lot, and they'll be willing to work with you, and that you'll onboard on your product and onboard on the vision and project, and then transform into your partner. So I'd say that's one of the best way to do it. And hiring freelancers is always a good way to hire people. I know Zenly did it a lot. They hired top people as freelancers that work for them 1 day per week, overpaid, and then onboarding them in the team once selected. So I'd say go with freelancers, be ready to pay people a lot, and you'll find top people. And again, if you have no technical co-founders, so I guess you can do the on-site technical assessment by yourself, so you have to find someone, usually, that can assess them.
Hello, so thank you for the presentation. Why do you say the technical assessment should be done on-site?
Because you'll have a way lower churn rate on the technical assessment, and then it can be beneficial for the candidates and the company. So what you're trying to do, and you should have a look at the sales acceleration formula for those who ordered it by mail. One part of the very interesting part of the technical assessment, but again, that's for sales, but it works for tech people as well, is to give feedback to the person. So and try and help them improve, and show that you're dedicated to improve the work of people in your team. And so you'll do this much better with an on-site interview. So on-site interview, the person knows he'll spend 2 hours tops with you. He'll have personal feedback. He'll work on very interesting problem because you'll be working with them. So it won't be just mere algorithmics bullshit exercises. If you send them an interview if you send them a technical assessment to do at home, you really have to sell them in doing this assessment. So it will be much harder to convince them to do it, and you'll lose people at this step, and you'll usually lose the best candidates. So it's a matter of figures. I think it's worth more of your time to spend the technical assessment, sit next to the person, and do it with them, than just have them do it at home and just don't take the test. Or if you send something to do at home, it should be 2 hours max, and you'll really have to convince the person to do it, so it really has to be very interesting. We have some companies, one of our top clients, the company that did our first hire with Hiresweet, sent the technical assessment, and then the CTO spends like 1 hour reviewing the technical assessment, so it's very interesting for the candidates, but they still have a very high churn rate at this point, especially on top candidates, so that's not why you want to lose candidates. I'd say, again, that's my point of view.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I think it makes sense. Why do you say the phone offer is just 50% conversion? I think it's quite low.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay. But is it because of the candidate or because of the company?
I think I'd say it's market. It's what we observe of all our companies. If they make an actual proper offer, they'll have a 50% chance that they'll get a yes. Again, it can be above, it can be below. So, but I'd say it's a pretty good estimate of what the market rate is. Again, you have to understand that the tech people that you're hiring will get at least 2-3 offers. So you have to pick one, and that's 30% or 50% success rate.
Okay.
But again, if it's better at your company, then it's great. And you'll have to work on this.
Okay.
Que la famille.